Action Comics 1054, Philip K. Johnson writing with Rafa Sandoval on art, on the main story at the very least. And this, of course, continues the cliffhanger where one of the twins showed up to this rally and maybe killed someone, but you could argue it's maybe a bit of a cop out that it's like, nah, turns out these are all Metallo drones, so she was never at fault.
But it doesn't really address the fact that she still tried and did those actions not knowing it was a Metallo drone.
Yeah. However, she is trying to explain, like, he was hurting people or whatever. And so I can, kid that was born on Warworld, she still has ways to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably teaching moments to come after this, but at least right now, obviously things are accelerating. There's too much going on to like stop and have that moment. John shows up with the other twin to try and stop her / help the person who's injured. Turns out they're Metallo drones. All hell breaks loose. Superman shows up to help as well. Metallo obviously is there too. He attacks John. They kidnap the kids. The idea is that, you've got my sister, so I'm going to take your family as well. And that all, escalates to this big showdown with Metallo, which by the end of it, Metallo is defeated and Superman promises to help get his sister back, as you would expect he would.
It gets very Superman in that moment, and I love it because it's just stuff that we've talked about from Johnson his entire run going back to Warworld. But I think it's... Go ahead, Connor.
I was going to say, it is very Superman, but at the same time, there's other parts in this issue where he's not out of character, but not doing as much of a good job, specifically with John. I don't know if it's intentional that's kind of the angle that it's going of, adding towards John feeling overlooked and he's not looking out for his family as much. He's too busy being Superman, or if it's just a flub.
Well, what I meant about being Superman is when he explains to Metallo, that type of stuff. Just the Superman, who would I be to turn down,
Well, also, he's great at doing that with the wider public, or in this case, villains.
Right.
But is he overlooking his family, with the way he's treating John? I don't know if it's an intentional thing or if I'm just reading that wrong.
What are you specifically talking about here?
There's the moment where after the kids are kidnapped, John's like, "Hey, no, it has to be me to go find them," and he explains that, "Oh no, they think that I replaced them, but I don't. I swear. But it's got to be me." And Superman's like, "Hey, I get it, but no, I'm doing this." And just kind of shrugs him off a little bit.
So I read that as he's pulling the dad card and was like, "No, I understand why you think that, but nobody thinks that. The kids don't think that. You just need to. I got this from here. You go help with the drones with the rest of the family."
Right, but this is where I feel like it's, again, I don't know if this is where the story is going, but it feels like he's not putting enough trust in John. He's overlooking his own family in that sense, and that John's going to start feeling that resentment a little bit. Because, I mean, even at the end of this, after Superman tells him, "Hey, I don't want you facing Metallo," he says, "Put on the dad card." John goes, he says, "Yes, sir," but he looks really dejected.
Yeah. Well, it's this thing, too, that he thinks can be a hero, right? It's the teenager thing. But I can go and do this stuff, too, but John or Clark...
I just think this beat, for me, feels really weird after we just had John be Superman for months when Clark wasn't here. He wasn't on planet. Clark left the planet and went, "Hey, John, you're Superman now. You're ready for this. You got this." And then he comes back and it feels like it's undermining that progression that John had. And again, maybe that's intentional. Maybe this is the story that it's going to be of John being like, "Hey, I thought I was ready for this. You thought I was ready for this. And now you're saying I'm not." And it's really contradictory.
Yeah.
But I kind of hope that's the story, because otherwise it's just playing a little bit weird for me.
I mean, I think the moment here with the heartbeat where he can tell John's being honest, that he's going to go and do what he says, but he looks dejected, like you say. I think that feels too intentional, that moment, to just be a flub. That to me feels like a very specific moment where it's like, he doesn't agree with this, he's not happy about it, but he'll do what he says.
Right.
I feel like this is too intentional for it not to be something that he's laying down, potentially for a story where maybe John is feeling overlooked or not trusted is not the right phrase, but you know what I mean, being undervalued as a
John might be overlooked, but he's not going to be overlooked enough to go to Kellex and ask to be transported to a planet. Right?
I think that's something that it's maybe this is playing again with those beats of the missing teenage years, and that John is an adult now, right? That's the age we're playing, a young adult,
college, early college maybe.
Right, but
right?
so 18 to 20, give or take. Again, relatively irresponsible in the grand scheme of adulthood, but an adult making his own decisions nonetheless.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't know if this is still playing back to those beats of, Clark missed those. He thinks he's still a teenager, like, hey, my house, we do what I say, sort of rules.
I just think he came from a place of safety because of Metallo and the kids, and that it's one of those things that Clark has to do it himself, and maybe that is part of it too. And John telling him, you have this family, we're here to help.
But that's the moment I think is weird for me, is that John's like, no, I have to be the one to do this. They have this, I was responsible. They think I feel this way. I need to be the one to rescue them, to show them.
Yeah.
And Clark kind of just brushes it off. And again, like I say, maybe he's just playing the dad card of, hey, no, at the end of the day, it's my problem. But it felt off to me. And I hope that's where the story's going, because then it's justifying this. Otherwise, it just feels a little bit strange.
Well, at the very least, I think the fact that he's saying it has to be me tells me that there's going to be at least a follow-up with him and the twins.
And the kids,
that wraps up that through line there, because I don't see that just being left behind now. I think that's definitely going to have a payoff.
I agree, but now I feel like for me as well, it has to have a beat between John and Clark as well as John and the twins.
Yeah,
I think that's what this scene set up for me, and I hope it does follow through on that.
That wouldn't surprise me if it does. Like, it doesn't seem out of the realm.
The run hasn't
possibility.
been angling towards that up until this moment. I haven't felt it until this issue, so it kind of feels a little bit out of nowhere compared to where we were with the twins.
I mean, to be fair, like this arc really is the first time that Johnson's really done anything with John, because Warworld was so separate from John.
Well, since his first story, right, where they went off to that alien planet.
Yeah, but that was ages ago. Like, John's been such but it's been so disconnected from the story that Johnson's been telling, that like the idea that he's not been angling this way up until now. It's
more
like,
just this is
he's not been around. This is the first time he's doing anything with him.
Right, but this is like the fourth issue of the arc. We've been doing the stuff with the twins the whole time, and this is kind of the first instance of John.
Well, yeah,
and
but
Clark.
we just introduced last issue that we have this thing between John and the twins, right? It just introduced that in the last issue. This issue is this next step of it, which is then bringing it into like Clark into the picture, like how he relates to all this.
For the twins a couple issues before.
Well, the scene where they asked him if they hated him. That was the last issue.
Oh no, that was the direct part of it, obviously. But there was the stuff before that with the jealousy, right?
What stuff before? I can't remember what you're talking about.
So obviously, was the John was asking to go play the game, the issue before, like that issue, right? The start of that issue.
Yeah,
it was the cube thing that Clark made for him, and then he realized, like,
yeah, I think that was last issue, was it not?
Yeah, I thought so.
Is that not the issue before?
Maybe what, but regardless, I mean, like, this is the next step of this story that he's been in this arc.
Yeah.
So this is the first time it's directly came between John and Clark. Obviously, you've had John, saying his feelings about the twins and how he's feeling, or we've been seeing how he feels weird about how these child memories he has are now happening with these twins. But this is maybe the first time that it's been directly kind of like between him and Clark, where he's actually it's came up in the story between them. So maybe this is just a natural point of like, this is where it finally converges and we start to see how it plays off between them. It probably wouldn't surprise me if we get a heart-to-heart with Clark and John at some point, where Clark talks to him about, how has this been, these feelings that have been bubbling.
Oh yeah, that kind of has to be there, right?
Yeah. So I suspect that. So we see the big twist to the end of this though. There's a little hint as well. The whoever's like sending the signal of his sister to him, basically says, Metal, you're a loser. You've always been a loser. This tech that we've been, testing in your body, we'll find a better host for it. And then there's a reveal who this next host is at the end. Also, where Metallo's sister is, all like, hooked up to hell knows what these pipes and shit are. But it's Cyborg Superman is the next attempt.
Hank Henshaw. You should have known it was you.
Can you tell it's an anniversary of Death and Return of Superman?
However, all of the stuff here that led to the drones, right? And all of that stuff, very smartly seeded to Henshaw, just with the way the technology jumps. Just
It does. I do want to clarify. I did not have a problem with that in this story. It was just a more of a hey,
no,
you know,
I know.
we had we got Steel showing up. We got a Connor Kemp book.
Yeah,
now
so
Cyborg Superman's back.
there's
It's
a
like, hey,
lot
we're kind of doing
going
everyone.
on. I think that's pretty sick. I mean, what I would say is that this, especially if the running theme here is that we keep using like different robotic enemies from Superman's history. It feels like a natural jump to go from Metallo to Cyborg Superman.
So, yeah.
And if there's another one after him, maybe you I don't know,
Right.
some sort of Brainiac drone or something.
I was going to say, yeah, Brainiac drones. Obviously, obviously since we got it, I mean, it was a while ago now, but the John's retcon into Brainiac being an actual being
person, right?
Yeah, like that obviously changes just to being a traditional cyborg or robot enemy. But
so it's revealed here that Metallo's new heart is a orphan box, but it's fueled by kryptonite, which
sounds horrific.
Right. So who could have done that? Right? Like
Lex.
We know it wasn't him.
It doesn't really line up.
He claims it wasn't him, and it doesn't line up. But somehow it was Lex.
No, I mean, if anything, it's more likely to be someone from Warworld or I don't know.
And so, because at first I thought, well, is this Henshaw? Has this been Henshaw's plan? Is that he's using World tech?
No, he feels like just the next step.
Yeah, because for a second I was thinking, is Henshaw behind all this? And I went, no. The voice said the next, maybe we'll find a better host. So he's the next host. He's not the one who's pulling the strings to this.
And that's what got me. So I'm like, so who's pulling Henshaw's chain here now? Right, to send him on that
Is there
direction.
a big Superman villain that could be a big reveal later on? Is anyone willing to take a complete stab?
I would just wait to throw out, maybe it is Brainiac. And, this is an extension of the Brainiac drones.
Yeah.
Is kind of doing it through various other robotic, elements of Superman's enemies.
Yeah.
To which end though? Right, is like, because Brainiac's the collector, right? Like he's so, is this a different version of Brainiac? Is this, is this the?
Hey, I don't have motivations locked down.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, because there are different, the whole, what was that book, Rebels, back in the early 2000s, that was the son of Brainiac, trying to distance himself from his dad's legacy. Is this someone like that? I thought that was a nice little wrinkle.
Actually, no, I've got the answer. We can move on. I've solved it. It's Superboy Prime. So let's just move on.
You say that like a joke, but I can see it working because he's the complete opposite of everything Superman stands for.
That's an old running joke that just blame Superman Prime as the mystery guy behind everything. But I don't know.
Punching realities.
It's Prime Time, baby.
Ozymandias.
No, we're not going down that
Dr. Manhattan.
We're not going down that path. I don't know. I don't know if there's maybe some big. I'm trying to think of who from Superman's Rogues Gallery would make sense as a.
I think the fact that it's keeping it a mystery definitely implies that it is someone we would recognize.
Yeah.
Not someone new.
Because it would be easy to rewrite these scenes and show us a face instead of just a voice if it was someone new, right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, and as someone that's familiar with these people, right? Because they were familiar with Corbin, because it was like, you're a loser. You've always been a loser. I should have known better than to have you do this for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't
know.
Mysteries afoot.
Anywho, that's the main story. So we got backups here as well. Of course, we're continuing the John backup with the princess alien chick. Gleanna, yes. Which is basically just her saving John because he's hurt when they crash land. She tells a bit of her backstory about how her royal family was attacked because things were going bad, and she fled to escape the kill squads. Then it turns out the big twist of this backup is that she's actually like an entitled princess evil bitch, and she's going to try and force Superman by keeping John captive. She has powers, and the robot that was attacking them works for her.
Well, she has like weird time powers, right? Because it's John that pulls her out of the fire, and then his hands are burnt, and she goes, "I thought you were invulnerable." He goes, "Well, we're not sure what I can do yet," because he's still a kid. And then so she uses like some time dilation stuff to reverse time to where his hands weren't burned, and stuff. So she's pretty powerful on her own, right? If she can do stuff like that. So what does she need Superman for?
To fight back the peasants?
Right, that I would feel, judging from her story and from what she revealed, is 100% they were, you know, they're going to go back and there's going to be like a utopia because they overthrew her family.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
It's feeling very French Revolution.
Yeah.
She's a Bourbon.
Yeah.
And you got the Napoleon leading the revolution of all the peasants. A little bit of an empire. Everything's going great at first, and she's going to go back and be like, look how terrible everything's going. Just put me back on the throne.
Yeah. I will say, I did think the twist at the end of this made me sort of just go, oh, okay, that's where we're going with this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I didn't really feel all that passionate about it.
It's a very Jurgen story, this, right? It's very, like, it's fine. Like, it looks nice. Jurgens, I think, he's always drawn better than he's written, at least for me. Not that he's been, not that he's ever a bad writer. Or, okay, no. He can be a bad writer, but not that he's always a bad writer. But he's rarely a great writer.
When he's inspired, he's really, you know, he can tell a real good superhero story.
I think it's when he's telling a story, like for characters he's particularly passionate about.
Yeah,
yeah. But I think he always draws great.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more invested in the Lois and Clark stuff in here about how this, you know, what's his name,
Doombreaker. Victor Von Doombreaker.
Victor Von Doombreaker. How he's kind of a cipher for trauma, right? Like Doomsday happened, affected this one guy. It kind of infects people as it goes, and so Clark's trying to find John, and Doombreaker attacks, and you know, I'm much more interested in that kind of story of, you know, Clark trying to help this guy, you know, break through. But we didn't get much of that. We got more of the spacey stuff that kind of ended with a
Yeah, I'm just, you know,
there's still, I assume, a couple of parts left.
Yeah, it's an easy enough read. But I will say, just kind of the flip to her being a villain just kind of felt like, okay, I guess. Yeah. That's what we're doing then, I guess. So I'm just not feeling super passionate about it. I did read the other backup as well because it's not the Power Girl one anymore. It's this is like a little
Steel.
It's a little seed into the Steelworks book that's coming in June.
I hope the Steelworks book is better than this.
Yeah, I got like two or three pages into this and I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah, I wasn't super into it. I think honestly the biggest problem with it is that it's really just Steel recapping his origin, and that's basically it. That's the whole thing.
And I'm okay with that as a reintroduction and stuff. The way he talks, constantly making technology puns, does not feel like John Henry Irons that I've read before.
I am glad that this was not Dawn writing this.
Yeah,
because my concern. I got a few pages in, I wasn't feeling it. Yeah. I was like, I'm just gonna flick to the end of this. I'm not that bothered.
Yeah, so yeah,
I was like, and I thought I best check the writer, and it's not. It's Dorado Quick.
Yeah, Dorado Quick is the writer. So, while it's obviously a lead-in for the Steelworks book, it's a different writer, so you wouldn't necessarily judge that book based on this.
No.
Yeah.
So that's what it's set before Action 1051. It's basically Steel on his way, you know, being late for his speech in front of the building and revealing to everyone that he's Steel, whilst in his head recapping his origin, and that's it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of there.
He fights a guy named Amalgam, who I'm not quite sure what his power is. Is he an android? Is he cybernetic? Like whatever his deal is, but he knocks.
He's an
John
amalgam
out.
of both, Matt.
I guess. And then at the end, as he's giving the speech, it goes to a guy in a shadowy room that kind of looks like an evil Mr. Terrific.
So, yeah. All right, that's Reaction Comics 1054. Matt, what are you giving it?
So I have to take the whole thing into account, not just the main story, which I really enjoyed. So I'm going to give it a 7.5.
All right.
I'm going to give it a 7. Solid issue, but I'm not as in love with this part of the run as I was the World stuff.
I'm going to give it an 8, but the slight asterisk that I'm just ignoring the backups because I don't feel the backups should drag it down if I enjoyed the main story. So if I'm averaging it with the backups, yeah, it goes down to like, I don't know, at most a 7, maybe a 6.5, but I'm ignoring those. Those don't exist. It's fine.